know when you come into a new field or you start something new, you wish you knew exactly what you're supposed to do to kill it? Maybe you've been selling for a while, and perhaps you just forgot some of those basic things. Or perhaps you're a sales leader and you have some folks coming on your team, they're recently graduated from college, and they're coming to start at your organization. What if we can give them some of the top things to make sure that they succeed? They can perform like the best. Well, don't you worry. Today we got that. My friend Tony Morris is going to lay that out for you today. Let's go ahead and check this episode out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast here on TSC TV, on YouTube. You may be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever. But I'm Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, we're going to cover 5 things. Tony, my friend, is going to be breaking this down. 5 things that every rookie, new sales reps like you, like me, at one point, we may have not, we were new. And perhaps you're brand new right now watching this, or perhaps you're listening to this, and maybe you're a sales leader and you're having some new reps come on board, or perhaps you're somebody who fell into a quagmire. You just feel like you're not striving the way that you possibly could. We're going to help you out today. We're going to break down 5 things that can help you as a new sales rep sell like the pro. Tony breaks this stuff down. Tony has been working with teams for a long time. He's been selling for ages, and just one of those individuals that you just fall in love with the way that he just teaches the concepts. So I won't take too much time. Let's go ahead and dive into some of the things that Tony shares, and let's see how we can help you and your team. And if this is your first time watching our channel, please go ahead and hit subscribe. I appreciate that. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review. It would go a really long way. Thank you so much. Let's go check it out. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you, Donald, for having me, my friend.
Hey, I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited to chat about the topic here. I'm a person who dedicate their whole business around helping new and struggling salespeople. So I'm looking forward to getting your insights on how we can help these new sellers turn into the pros. But before we dive into all the fun stuff.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into all the fun stuff there, Tony, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so currently I'm a speaker. I travel around the globe when we're allowed, speaking at sales kickoff conferences. I run a sales training business called Tony Morris International. So I travel around the globe helping people sell more often with ease. And I also am an author. I'm on my 6th book now, which I'm pretty excited about. And I have a couple of podcasts, which you'll know because you've been on one of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, I appreciate you again being here, and I thank you so much for being willing to share some of your wisdom and insights. You bring a wealth of knowledge, as you say, with your experience working with other organizations and other sales reps, and being able to interview other sales leaders. So new sellers, they have a lot on their plate. I mean, they have a lot of a struggle. And I think one of the areas that I've seen when I work with organizations and when I have my own team as well is getting people ramped and getting them ramped quickly. Imagine if you could take a new sales rep and turn her into one of your pro. Just look at your pro, your vet you had for 10 years and hit quota and exceeds quota. Getting that new seller to that sales rep would be fantastic. But the reality, it doesn't happen. So we want to get today, how can we do that? How can we get these new sales reps to turn into pros? And we said 5 things you have in mind that we can do. So what's that first thing that you would say, the very first thing seller needs?
I thought long and hard about this. And I think, I really dug deep to think, what are the core principles or the most important elements to what the best salespeople do different, right? And the first one for me is one of the first things I learned 21 years ago. And it's the Pareto law rule, the 80-20 law. And when you apply that into the sales world, top performers should only ever speak 20% and listen 80%. And you may have heard that expression, we got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Use them in that order. But most salespeople that I work with, I would say they're doing it 80-20, but they're totally the wrong way round. And I always say they've got 5 mouths, 1 ear. So I think my first tip And my first sort of standard, if you will, would be get the prospect or customer talking much, much more than you. And the main reason for that is it makes them comfortable. People love to talk about themselves. And I think you'll find out a lot more about them and build a better rapport quicker if they're talking more than you.
Hmm.
And that isn't easy to do, but that's all down to asking better questions and, most importantly, listening effectively.
No, 100% agree on that. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the right part there, that it's getting the sales reps to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
How do I train my new seller to ask the right question? Is that a case of doing more role plays with them, or helping them understand the problems more? Or is that more of giving them some simple questions that they can use so they don't have to reinvent the wheel and take so long to ramp up?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's a combination of all of the above. I think, look, the first thing we need to know is what are the right questions to ask. And I call these killer questions, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. So I do quite a lot of work in the real estate space. And I was listening to some negotiators who've got maybe a few months experience. And also was listening to people who've got over 5 years experience. But
Mhm.
they asked the wrong questions. They were saying things, Donald, like they were qualifying a buyer and saying things like, have you been looking for a property for a while? And the buyer would go, yeah, I have. And then they'd go, have you seen any you like? And the buyer would go, no, that's why I'm talking to you. And these were just crap questions. So when I said, guys, let's think deep, what's a one question that's open, so we can't get a yes or a no, that's going to provoke conversation, and it's going to get out the info that you need. And after a while, they brainstormed and they came up with the killer question, which to me was, what's the best you've seen so far?
Ooh.
And what that did is it cuts out the noise. It's good to know you've been looking for a month, and it's good to know you've seen 30 properties, but what's the best you've seen so far? Get cuts to it. So to answer your question, I think we need to understand what's the key information we need to ascertain from the prospect during the journey. And only once we understand that and that key data, that key information, then we can design very clever killer questions in order to ascertain that information. And I
Yeah.
think then it's a case of role play, like you said, listening to people on the phone, asking them, and making it as natural and conversational as possible.
Agreed. Agreed 100% on that. I'm a big believer in that idea, and I love that killer question. And I think one of the
Yeah.
thoughts that you said in that was, imagine if I was a sales leader working with the team to help them to build up
Mm.
their cognitive skills to be able to ask effective questions. Do something like
Yeah.
that. Or if a company could bring
Yeah.
someone like yourself in to help them to figure out what are some of those killer questions, because in their industry they might know it, but more than
Yes.
we do, because they're in it every single day on the front lines. So that
Yeah.
I love that idea. Get them to
And
pull it out.
one exercise that I teach when I do training is a very simple, and I suggest clients do this or companies do this, is come up with a topic. Let's say you and me would talk about movies, and that
Yeah.
was your topic, and I would ask you open questions only about movies. And I'm not allowed to ask a closed question, so I can't get a yes or no. And what you find when you start coaching your brain to become very conscious of this, the more you do it, the more natural it seems, and the more habitual it becomes. And we'd end up having what I call a conversation, not an interrogation.
All right.
And I think the more they do that, the more, as I said, they just become comfortable. And then the questions will just flow. And that's the key. If I can get comfortable as a rep, then my prospect gets very comfortable as a buyer. And then it will just flow.
So I know we have four more of these points, but I love playing fun role plays.
Yeah.
So let's go. Let's do that right now. So why don't you ask me some of those movie questions? We're just talking about
Yeah,
movies before we
perfect.
started.
So what's the first film you ever remember seeing, Donald?
Oh man, first film ever remember seeing. Ugh. I think it may have been. Dang, I can't think about the first film. I'll say
Well, the
one of
one
the.
that had the most impact on you, the one you do remember.
Let's go with Lion King. No,
Ah,
no.
classic movie. See, my son can't even watch it because, when the dad dies in Lion King, right? It just killed him. And he now thinks every Disney film's sad, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Fox and the Hound was another one. That's one of before Lion King. I remember that one. I saw that one.
Oh, I've never seen that movie. I'll have to check that out. And
Yeah.
when you go and watch a movie with your partner or your friends, what genre do you tend to go for? What's your go-to genre?
With my wife, more drama. With the guys, more action.
Oh, okay. So hit me. What's your best action and what's your best drama movie?
The best action recently. It's been a while since we've been to the movies, but I'll probably say the Black Panther movie was one we saw
Great
together.
movie. Great
And
movie.
then also any of the Avenger movies. Those are
Okay.
action comedy. Yeah.
And what about the drama when you're with your partner?
My wife, she loves, I'd say one of the ones that we've been focusing on recently. Let me see. Well, we definitely love The Office, so we watch that TV show, but The Notebook
Oh,
is probably her favorite drama movie.
oh, it's too sad, man. It's too sad. It's a great movie, and
Yeah.
one final question. How old were you when you watched Fox and Hounds?
Probably was around 9.
Okay. So we'll stop there for 2 secs. So
Yeah.
let's just break down what I did.
Yeah.
I did what's called a tag on question. So everything you said, I questioned it. I then did a statement question where I said, "Oh, I love that movie. What did you like about it?" So
Yeah.
I engaged you more. And then I used a technique called a replay question. So I went back to how old were you when you watched Fox and Hound, which demonstrates to you I listened. And
Yeah.
people like to be listened to, right?
Yeah.
So that's just a simple technique where I got quite a lot out of you. I know your wife likes drama, your mates like action, but
Yeah.
I used, as well as asking open questions, I used 3 different techniques using those questions, which would draw out loads of stuff from you.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not just about the questions we ask, but it's the timing and the type of questions we ask to really provoke conversation.
Love it, dude. Love that stuff. Well, let's continue. What's number 2?
See, number 2 is a well-known saying, and I don't know if Donald, if growing up you remember this, but I know I do. And it was my dad, my late dad, always said to me, "Treat people how you want to be treated."
Mm-hmm.
You remember that saying?
Sure do.
And as a kid, I didn't really understand what it meant. But as I got a bit older, I sort of understood that if I wanted people to treat me in a certain way, like with respect, or being kind or being courteous, whatever it was, then I had to treat them exactly the same. But then when I understood sales and the principles of selling, I realized that statement or phrase was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned to understand in sales, it's treat people how they want to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
not you. And what I got from that is that, as you know, we're all different in this beautiful world. We're all different. So I can't treat you, Donald, the same as I'd treat one of my customers or one of my prospects, because all 3 of you will have different behaviors. So therefore, my job as a salesperson is to identify your behavior quickly. And there's little triggers to spot that, and then adapt effectively. So I treat you how you want to be treated, which will very likely be different to me. And I think that's a really important lesson in sales.
Yeah, agree 100% on that. We call it internally, one of my mentors taught me that, and we call it the platinum rule. Golden rule, like you said, treat others the way that, you would like to be treated. Platinum goes a little bit further. The way that everybody wants to be treated is to be personalized towards. And if you
I
do
like
it
that.
the way I care for it, then that's going to be much better than just like a cookie cutter example or a cookie cutter solution. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
So we have these new sellers now. They're getting pumped. They're asking better questions. They're thinking about the prospect, have the empathy, personalizing towards them. Number three. What's number three, Tony?
Number three, and this is a biggie. And to me, it's about rapport, but if I could highlight one of the most, in my opinion, the most important elements of building real rapport is this. You don't need to be interesting, be interested. See, what I notice with top producers, and this is whether you have success from your first year or whether you've got success over 20 years, but the ones who seem to make it and hit quota, and as you said, exceed quota, is they are genuinely curious and they are sincerely interested in their prospects, and they understand their job is not to sell, their job is to serve, and they're there to help people buy. And I think, it's not just about the quick sale, the quick win, and on to the next. And I think if you're genuinely curious, then you don't win customers, you win what I call raving fans. And they'll be customers for life, but they'll also become your ambassadors. They'll recommend you to their friends, their family, their colleagues, because you've served them effectively. And I think that all comes down to that key principle: be curious.
Yeah, I'm a believer in that too. I love that, being curious. How would I train my reps to do that though?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think they need to understand why. See, a lot of people, if they don't understand the reason behind it, they won't take action. So I think if you can communicate to your reps, the value in doing it, they're more likely to do it. And then what you need to do is test them on it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say they go out on a meeting or they have a Zoom with a potential customer, and that they have a meeting for half an hour or so. When they finish that meeting, I would say share 3 things about them that I wouldn't know. So what you're doing is you're testing them on what's the little key triggers, what I call nuggets about that person. And it might be personal things like they've got kids, their kids' names, but it might be more than that. It might be things that are important to that prospect. It might be how they like to be communicated with. It might be about their real motivation to why they made an inquiry with you. But it's just going that little bit, going deeper and really probing and going that next level. And if I'm not genuinely curious, I wouldn't have got that information out of them. So that's how I'd coach it.
Okay, that's a good way. I mean, I can see team members doing that in their Monday morning or weekly sales meeting, taking advantage of that. All right,
Yeah.
so we just hit up all these 3 points now. We're lock, stock, barrel. These new sellers, they know how to ask effective questions. They're personalizing it, and then also they're making sure they go a little deeper and so forth. But number 4, what is the number 4 principle?
Number 4, and this was really interesting. So I got this from a book called The Challenger Sale, which I don't know if you've come across, but I love that book. And I was very lucky to have Matt Dixon, one of the authors, on my podcast.
Yeah.
And when I read it back in, I think it was 2008, it came out, but I read it in 2010. It really changed my perspective, because for me, sales was all about relationships. And what this Challenger Sale proved is the most successful salespeople were able to share insights to make their prospects think differently. And they labeled this profile of a salesperson as the challenger. And I've embraced that now. And what I do, and I'll give you a good example. So I got an inquiry about 2 weeks ago for my business, for a wealth management business, they give financial advice.
Yeah.
And I could have, started building a good rapport with the decision maker and a question about what they're looking for. But I took it a step further. And when I understood their sales process and what they were hoping to achieve, I challenged their process a little bit and questioned it, which to begin with made him quite uncomfortable and said, look, why are you questioning this? And I said, because I think you could do it better. He said, in what way? And I gave him 2 or 3 ideas, and he said, I absolutely love it. So, in a way, I challenged a process that he'd been following for years within his business. which made him a bit uncomfortable, as I said. And then I shared a couple of ideas of how I think it could be done even better, which he hadn't even thought about. So
Yeah.
immediately I added value. And bear in mind, this was in a 20-minute conversation. And I was probably very conscious that this was an inbound inquiry. So he was probably speaking to my competition. So I needed to stand out and seem better than them. And for me, this is one of the best ways I can. So my number 4 is don't be afraid of challenging, but as long as you can back it up and share value and add insights to make your prospect think a little bit differently, and ultimately add value to them in any way you can. That would be my number 4.
You see, and I love that because I feel that some people, they don't read or study the content, but they hear the idea of a challenger and they think that they can go out and just be a jerk. And that's not what it is. Because you can, one of the things I hate are whiners. People who whine and they don't give a solution or make, they arbitrarily try to start interrogation or start problems. But I feel what the challenger does, it makes it that you are a consultant. And like the way that you did it was like perfect. It's like I'm coming in with fresh eyes that you probably are not looking at because you've been looking at it for this way for the past 15 years. But here, I'm just curious because you're using it this way when I feel that you could change it another way. So I'm challenging your status quo. And you back it with proof or with suggestions. And I think that's a much better idea. And so if you haven't studied the Challenger Sale, we're going to link back. What's the episode number on your podcast?
It is. I haven't launched it yet, but it'll be, I think it's number 45. And I'll send the link to your listeners with pleasure.
All right. We'll link back in and you guys better subscribe to his show as well.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
All right, Tony. So now the last thing, what's the last thing that we need to do? Number 5, this new seller, getting this new seller to perform like the top performer, the sales pro on your team. What's that final advice or tip?
And this is going to sound very simple, but it's, we both know, Donald, sometimes the simple things don't get done. Yeah. So I'm going to and I'm going to put number 5 into 2 parts. Mm-hmm. The first part is do the basics brilliantly. And what I mean by that, when you break sales down in its lowest form, it really is quite straightforward, right? Our job is to prepare for a phone call and a meeting. Our job is to prepare some questions, to preempt objections, have a conversation, build a rapport with that person, understand their problem, and come up with a solution. In a nutshell, that is our job. So it is quite basic, but most salespeople don't do the basics. So that's the first point of number 5. And the second point, which is where most salespeople I find fail, is in the follow-up. They give up so damn early. And they'll either do a proposal and follow up once, not get hold of the person and quit because they're scared of being pushy. Yeah. Or they'll phone a prospect 5 times, don't reach them, and call it a day because they think, oh, if they were interested, they'd call me. Rubbish. They might have something else going on in their life more important than you. And it might take 55 calls to make contact. But if you've identified them as a genuine prospect that you believe, A, you can serve and help, and B, you've identified them as a good opportunity for your product and service, keep bloody chasing them. And I'm not saying you phone them every day where you become a stalker, but connect with them on LinkedIn, comment on their posts, send them an article of interest, send them a copy of your book or a book you've read that you think's good, send them a link to a podcast like yours or mine that you've listened to and embraced and enjoyed, but stay in the forefront of their minds, so that when they are ready to buy, you will be the first person they think about. And I think if you can follow up successfully and consistently, you will perform better than most.
Amen on that one. I'm in agreement with you, and I feel that it's a critical idea, but it's so simple. Again, I feel that so often many of us we if we did the things that we knew we were supposed to do, we'd all be amazing, sexy beasts. But we don't eat
Absolutely.
the way we're
And
supposed to. We don't sleep the way we're supposed to. We don't exercise the way we're supposed to. We know we're supposed to. And I think the same thing with sales. It doesn't make any difference. We need to do those simple things.
totally. And what I've learned with that, Donald, is we've all got habits, right? We've all got a lot of bad habits, but top performers have more good habits than bad. And I learned this when I read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. To me, it just really, it so much resonated that once you know the right way of doing things, you'd be an idiot to not keep doing it.
Yeah.
And the more you do it and ultimately get good results, it reinforces it, and then it becomes habitual, and you just don't even think about it anymore. And that's what this is about in sales. It's about learning what are the right things to do. And once you get that, keep bloody doing them in that simplest form,
Yeah. Love it. Well, if there's one major takeaway, Tony, you want folks listening to this episode to walk away with, what's that one major piece of advice?
Well, listen to the episode and take action. I think that's the important bit. And I think in all seriousness, actually, I think that's a really big point. There was a saying I heard years ago that knowledge is power. And I disagree, because you could be the most knowledgeable person in the world, but if you don't apply it, it's not that powerful. So for me, if there was one final takeaway, is become a student of sales. I heard this from one of my guests and I loved it, is you never graduate from the school of sales. And the key is, and the key differentiator from top performers to average is they learn, but they implement. And I believe it's implementation of knowledge is power. And it's all about taking action on what you learn. And don't get me wrong, you're not going to do it right every time, but I call those beautiful lessons that we have along the journey. And the more lessons you get at the game, the better you get at the game.
Well, I love it, man. Well, we're going to put this stuff back in our show notes so folks can get access to it. If that's the case, and we want to get in touch with you, Tony, what's the best way to connect with you?
Oh, thank you, Donald. I appreciate it. Probably my best website, I've got a few websites, but my gateway website is TonyMorrisInternational.com. And that would take you to my speaking website, my training company, my shop with my books. And it will also take you to my online sales membership platform, TMI University. So yeah, that's be the best way for them to get in touch. Definitely TonyMorrisInternational.com.
Well, Tony, we thank you so much for taking the time to come on our show. We thank you for your wisdom, and we're grateful for
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, Donald. Thank you.
Anytime, brother. Listen, that was our good friend Tony Morris, and if you haven't connected with him yet, just go down to the link below, click on that, and it'll take you back to Tony's LinkedIn and to his website. And he shares a lot of content on social media. I want you to be able to just follow him and to take some of those insights that he's sharing and apply them to your life. I know they're going to help you. I promise you. Even if you've been selling for ages, you can still learn a lot from these principles, as well as share them with someone that's coming up in the game, somebody who's brand new in sales. Let's help those individuals have a path to success. This stuff works. I want you to succeed. I want you to thrive. And speaking about work, I want you guys to test out the sponsors. They're giving you some great offers. See those things in action. I know they work. We use it internally, and they make a difference. So test it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. As always, I share stuff like this because I want you to thrive. I want you to succeed. I want you to find more of those ideal customers. I want you to know what to say when you reach out to them. I want you to close more deals. But most importantly, I want you to raise your level of thinking and go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video today. If you enjoyed the content, I ask you to go ahead and hit that like button, that thumbs up at the bottom right-hand corner. Also, to make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. This way, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest sales strategies, latest tools, and things that are going to help you to not only find more prospects, but to close more deals. Thanks so much.